Hi, friends. I'm Pastor Terry Lee. We are Okotoks Alliance Church, and this is the 10-Minute Coach. Looking at the biblical text we looked at on Sunday, November 13, Genesis 37 through 45. And the question that I posed was really this: can God redeem the disappointments of our lives? Is it even possible that He is at work in the disappointments of our lives, doing something far greater than we ever could have possibly imagined Him doing? We're in the biblical account of Joseph, and we reviewed the fact that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob's name's changed to Israel. Jacob had 12 sons, and the oldest was Reuben, the youngest was Benjamin. Joseph is the second youngest of those sons. Joseph and Benjamin are the sons of Rachel, the particularly preferred wife of Jacob. And all of these family dynamics have created all sorts of complicated problems, including the favoritism that we find present, where Joseph was being favored by his father Jacob. It caused all kinds of dissension within the brothers. Jacob was repeating the pattern that he had seen in the previous generation, where his dad preferred him and his mom preferred him. His dad preferred his brother Esau. I don't know if we see it so much in the Abraham and Sarah story, where Ishmael is born and then sent away because the promised son is the son that they were supposed to wait for, which was Isaac. And here we are, we're looking at the children of Jacob is really the way it's set up. The Toledot is the Hebrew word, the generations of. And this is a theme that we see through Genesis, and we've been tracking from the beginning of the book of Genesis through to the end of the book of Genesis. And these generations of descriptions are seen in Adam, the generations of Noah, the generations of Abraham. Now we're looking at the generations of Jacob. And we're looking. By the time we got to the end of the message, I'm inviting you to find yourself in these stories, and it's always a helpful thing to do. But I began by suggesting that if you're with others, so if it's your family and you're kind of recounting these biblical texts and talking about them together, maybe around the dinner table, or if you're in your life group, there's value in recounting the story. We've covered a lot of territory here. There's 8 chapters of the book of Genesis that we covered in one message, and it's worth recounting the story. And don't go to the most seasoned biblical scholar among you. See if there's somebody who this is newer material for, and let them retell the story. What is it that they notice? What are the parts that they get right? What are the parts that they get wrong? Don't ride them about it. Don't make fun of them, certainly. But allow them to kind of find their way through the story and hear what they heard, and then coach them along to fill in the dots where they can't quite get it. We're in the process of helping one another become disciples of Jesus, and the scriptures tell us about Jesus. Even the Old Testament passages, Jesus said, all of this pointed to me. And so let someone who's maybe got less biblical knowledge work their way through it, see what they've caught, see what they haven't caught, fill in the gaps for them. It's part of the process of helping one another grow to become disciples of Jesus. I've given you the opportunity to tell some stories. You don't have to do this, but tell some stories about your family of origin. Is it a wonderful story, or is it a story with complications in it? Have you ever been estranged from your siblings? Maybe you have you been reconciled to them? Do you have hope that it's possible for reconciliation to be there if you bring God into the equation, which is a big part of what we're trying to do here, because the narrator, Moses, I contend, has been showing how God is present in the middle of the lives of these would-be followers of God families. Some of them get really, really super messed up. We get to the account of Judah and Tamar. Warning: if you're reading this as a family, don't read that text through. Talk about it. Talk about it, because we need to let our kids know this may be an opportunity for a sex ed class for you and your kids. But be forewarned, if you've never read that text before, you need to read it in advance, because it is graphic, it is sinful, and it's going to raise all kinds of questions for your kids, which are good questions for you as a parent to be the authority, answer the questions that your children have about sex and the appropriate place for it and so on. But you don't want to just dive into this unawares. But I mentioned it on Sunday in passing because it's another place where we find the evidence that God is at work in this story. And this kind of shows the low point of Judah's life. Oh my goodness, the moral depravity, the brokenness, the disappointment. His sons are both executed by God because they're evil, and we've seen a lot of evil in the text that has not required that. So it really makes you wonder, what did those brothers do? The first brother in particular. Second brother refuses to carry on the family line for his brother, and that may be the sum total of why God ends his life. Anyway, we're seeing God at work in these stories, and that is a big part of what I'm hoping that you will do together as a family or as a life group. I've mentioned 3 places where we see God show up. What are some other places where we see God show up in the story, where it's just unmistakable? I gave you a leg up on that in Genesis 45, 4-5, where Joseph says, don't beat yourselves up about this. What you intended for evil, God intended for good. And that has got to be one of the classic lines from the Old Testament, as God was at work in the middle of this. And it's part of the reason why my opening question was, where's God? This isn't just about God making lemonade out of lemons. He was actually at work in the details of all of this. We could say, if only Joseph hadn't found his brothers in... what's the name of the town up from Shechem? Not Gotham, but sorry, I got that word in my mind. Sorry. What if he hadn't? Hadn't been thrown into the pit, hadn't then, the Midianite traders just happened to come along. God's providential hand is in the account after account after account, and I think there's value in recounting that and then applying it to our own lives. We are told to retell for one another the stories of where God has been at work in our lives. And maybe this is an opportunity for, maybe you haven't thought about it for a while, or maybe ever. What are those places? We talked about it last Sunday, those thin places where God shows up, maybe unawares, unexpected, but we're invited to look for it. The God sightings or the God stops, as Gay with the youth describes it. What are the God stops that we need to say, you know what? God showed up in that. Do you know what? That was a really difficult situation or a distressing situation, and God showed up in that. And I see God's hand at work in these things. Maybe you got to go back 10 or 20 or 30 years. Start there, and then start a new register and keep track of where God is showing up in your life. Where did he show up this past week? Where might he show up today? So these are some opportunities that we have together to ask some questions and to trust that God is at work restoring, redeeming the broken experiences of our lives in a broken world. And the invitation is to trust that the God who is the same yesterday, today, and forever, who was involved then, is involved now, and will be involved through eternity. That is our God. That is the one we worship. That is the one we serve. And it's this invitation time and again for us to come back and say, oh, man, I'm worried about X, Y, or Z in my life, in my family, in my marriage, in the economy of the world, in the politics of the world. I am choosing to put my faith and my trust in God. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I'm going to trust that in all of this, he is working his good plan and his good purposes, even in the details of my life. Have a great conversation together as a life group, your family. Maybe it's just you and Jesus meeting for quiet time. May he meet with you in power and bring much encouragement and instruction and growth to you. I'm Pastor Terry Lee. We are Okotoks Alliance Church, and this has been the 10-Minute Coach. Bless you, and bye for now.